So I'm working at the moment, stuffing stuff. Um, and I figured I'd just record because I've been having a bunch of random thoughts. So I figured I haven't done like a video of work or whatever. So why not, right? I have a bad habit of not looking at the camera. Um, so another random thought that I have. Let's just see, because a lot of times my random thoughts are in the car, and I can't just whip out my phone while I'm driving, mid fucking thought process and kind of processing and talking out loud to myself while I'm driving. Um, but then when I want to sit down and talk about it, my brain's like, so I'm trying to remember the topics I was thinking about while I was in my car. Um, I'm gonna get a little TMI. Anyway, what was I talking about? Right, so one of my random thoughts, let's just get the TMI out the way now. Um, what drives me a little what drives me a little crazy, right? Is like people are on the fence with the whole spiritual thing and like the whole practicing the craft type of thing where it's like back when I was young, right? When I was 16, it was it's still kind of considered taboo, with all the religious people out there. However, it's more open, I guess, but that's because it's trending, you know? And like it's a 50-50 toss up with me. Right, so with the whole like manifesting and vibes and visualization and energy and frequency, like everything, because it's trending, it just sounds like a bunch of hippy dippy woo woo shit. And it's like anyone that talks about it, like people just, I don't know, it just feels like a bunch of posers. That's such a fucking old ass word, but I don't know any other word to use. It's just like a bunch of fucking posers that just want to hop on a fucking trend. Right. Um, and I know I'm restarting. So, like, a part of me feels like I don't have any right to speak on it because even though I've been practicing since I was 16, it's kind of been on and off. I haven't taken myself seriously enough to actually fully practice and like actually read more books, which I'm so proud of myself. I'm almost done with my first book. Um, and if you don't know, it's this one. I'm almost done. Um, got a lot of thoughts on this. And then my next book, I'm so excited, is going to be The Psychic Witch, which a lot of people are talking about. Anyway, and I'm going to like reread some of the books that I have, even though they're kind of like, I guess, old school because they're from the 90s. Anyway, I guess, it's still weird trying to use the words that we use to explain how we do things like meditating and visualizing and stuff like that. When talking about it, it just, because it's being used so much, it doesn't sound like you're serious. Like you don't sound like a serious someone to be taken seriously. And the topic that I'm trying to get to is like the people who have a hard time meditating or like visualizing. I don't. I'm very uh again, on and off with meditating. I do it in multiple different ways, which that's what people have to do is kind of figure out. But and if you have like a hard time visualizing, right. So anyway, there's something that I think that might help with both like just a small meditation that you can do every day, and you can like envision it being flushed out of your system. And that's when you go to take a dump. Um, because I know some people probably are, constipated and stuff, and sometimes it's difficult. So you can, if you can remember, every single day when you go to take a dump, you kind of sit there and you just breathe. Focus very calmly, breathe, and tell yourself, I don't know, maybe get rid of the toxins within me. Get rid of like negative thoughts. Get rid of anything that's making me angry. Get rid of me thinking about my ex or thinking about a friend or the argument that I had at work. Kind of envision as you're pooping that it's just tar being pulled out of your body. And I know that might be hard, but it might help because you can feel it coming out of your body. And it's just another way to kind of physically feel what you're trying to say, because crap is literally all the shit that your body doesn't need anymore and it doesn't want anymore. So physically feeling that while you're repeating to yourself what you want to get rid of might help. I know it's a bit like TMI, but that's one way to start. Yeah, that's kind of another way is I go on hikes a lot. Again, I notice a lot of my meditating could be like all the times in my car where like all of the thoughts just come kind of randomly flooding in while I'm driving to work and driving anywhere by myself. My brain is constantly like topics just keep coming to my head, and that's like another way, just kind of trying to like sift through the thoughts. Don't try to shut them up, just kind of think about each one and discuss it. I don't know, you might feel a little crazy because you're legit talking to yourself and talking about your opinion out loud, but again, it might help. Afterwards, you probably won't need to think about it later. Definitely like driving when I'm by myself, listening to music, or especially listening to a podcast. Podcasts get my brain running. I love listening to people's different like thought processes and experiences, and their opinions on things and how they see things. And I listen to multiple podcasts. I listen to multiple podcasts. Okay. There goes that dyslexia kicking in. And what was another thing that I wanted to talk about? There was something else. It was like a quick kind of deep. All right, so it was about God, right? There's like this disconnect. I feel like I've kind of touched on this topic. Maybe, honestly, I don't remember. Sort of, where I feel like I said something that like I don't know where the disconnect between science and spirituality like don't coincide, even though like a lot of people probably do, like that's what they believe, right? That's their belief system. What's going on here? Oh. But I feel like the evolution of man, of human, really tried to tear apart science and spirituality, and I feel like that's not how it should be. They should be walking hand in hand. Like spirituality should be a part of scientific study and part of the science that we believe in now. And anyway, with that said, I had this random thought, because my friend, he has a podcast called Just Conversation. It's with him and his fiance. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little behind on listening because I've been so distracted listening to so much other stuff. But it's a great podcast. They talk about a lot of random things. It's literally just conversation. Literally exactly what it is. The title is, that's what it is. And there's one of their older videos where they were talking about God. And what really threw me was my friend's like like theory or thought process was, what if God doesn't exist because God had to die for all of this to be created? So God was the Big Bang. And I was like, let's continue. So the whole thought process of like humans are made in God's image is because the Big Bang was God kind of sacrificing itself, because you needed some type of immense power to create that, like, I guess, scientific cataclysmic event, right, to happen. So God did that, and it took however billions of years for us to get here. We're still we can still be considered made in God's image, because everything can also be considered made in God's image, right? Like every star, every moon, every planet, everything on earth, everything is God, and you are also a part of God. So it's like the Big Bang was God. And I'm just like, oh, I kind of like that. Like, God is not like dead, but God had to, I guess, evolve into something else to create what we have now. And the whole idea behind energy and the forces and the wavelengths and all this, all that is like God. Because it's like energy, the spiritual people that believe energy is everywhere and we're a part of the energy, right? All of the frequencies and all this other stuff, we're all connected, right? Because we're also God. Like, we're a part of God. We are God's children, so we should treat ourselves as such, right? And I'm like, oh, that statement alone, my mind was like, oh, bitch, I actually like that. That would that kind of makes sense. I'm not gonna lie, that kind of makes a little bit of sense. It really did. It threw me. And so ever since then, even though it's just kind of like, my theory, or like, his thought on like what if, I don't know. That kind of facts. Like, that kind of sounds like some type of wild ass facts that could be plausible for the people who do believe in God, but also believe in the energies of like science and stuff like that. Because, what was I saying? Right. So, going off that, like, I believe that God is that like energy force, and God doesn't have an image. Did I get into this? I feel like I've thought about it so much that I thought I recorded it before, but I'm not too sure if I got this deep into the topic, because I've thought about it so many times, and I'm like, I need to just kind of random talk about this shit. Look at my dragon. Oh, right. So, talking about like the idea of God, right? I don't think humans understand to an like, I don't know. A lot of people, I don't believe that God has an image. And I don't mean like just deities. There was something said in the Order of Chaos podcast, that this, I forgot who was the guest on there. He said something, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy I'm not the only one, because I was really battling with the idea of like deities and God. So I feel like deities are completely different from God itself. If that makes any sense. If that makes any sense. And the guy was like, well, deities, they each have a specific title. He believes that deities are created specifically to help you with the human traits that you need help with. Because it's like the God of war, God of love, God of wisdom, God of this, God of that, God of water, God of air. All of this stuff are more humanistic traits that maybe us as human beings need help with in that like department, right? You ask them for their help. Whereas God, the creator of everything else, that's something vastly different from the deities. And I'm like, I'm so happy that I heard someone on a podcast say it, because like I was kind of battling like, who the fuck, like all these different like belief systems, all these different God figures, which one is like the creator of the universe, the creator of the galaxies, the creator of everything that we know to believe in now? You know, the energies, the science of everything that's together. And the way he said it, I was like, wow, that kind of makes sense. That's kind of how I been gravitating towards. Like I was going towards this thought process of deities are just the physical manifestation that God puts itself in when you need that. Like God doesn't have an image because God itself that's created the universe, we as humans can't comprehend such a power, right? Like we can't really comprehend something not having a physical image, right? Which also goes into like fairy folklore, where like fairies don't really have an image. Their essence are out of our comprehension because of the dimension that they come from, right? Like if you actually see a fairy, that being is just trying to put itself in a form that our human brains our human brains can understand. So I feel the same kind of concept, right? I was struggling because I'm like, I feel the same way. Like I don't feel like, no disrespect to anyone that work with deities, right? Like no disrespect in any way at all. Power to you. You know, that's what you do. I don't personally, I'm not sure if I want to work with deities. That just seems like another relationship that I just don't feel like being in. But I do want to learn about them naturally. It's just what I believe is that God is putting itself in this position as the deity that you need to help you. And like to me that just makes sense. And I know that's probably going to itch a lot of people's ass. It's probably going to maybe piss some people off. And it's like, it's okay. That doesn't mean that they're not real. That doesn't mean that you're not working with them. It's just, I personally, I don't believe that they're a thing of their own. Like, I don't think they're individual beings. Because for me to believe that all of the energies, like in that realm of like spirit, like things that are not like physical, like us, like the human realm of reality, anything that's outside of that, to me, the reality is they don't have a physical form. Because as a human being, we need these things to have an image so that we can, how can I put it, that we can connect to them. Because let's say, if going off a thought, Thor, right? God of thunder. What if he didn't have an image? Like the God of thunder would only be the sound of thunder. So imagine if there was no image to Thor, and you would have to listen maybe to like a rainstorm, listening to the sound of thunder, and that's how you work with that deity. A lot of people wouldn't, some people might not be able to do that, right? Because of the issues with visualization, right? I know there's backstories to all like Greek mythology and Norse mythology and Egypt mythology, like all of that. They all have like their whole like history of like gods and their stories. all that. And that's wonderful because I want to learn about all of it. However, I still walk in that process of all these images are just coming from this one God source. That because God made us this way and because this is how our brain works, I'm going to give you what you need to do what you got to do. So if you feel like you need to work with, you know, God of love, whatever God that is, I'm going to come to you as such. And this is going to help you do whatever you need to do. Again, that might like hurt a lot of people's feelings because they're like, no, my God is real. That's okay. That's okay. That's cool. That's fine. Like that whole process had my mind going. And ever since I like started taking my spiritual journey seriously, of course, you naturally start gravitating towards your connection with God and what God is. And, I, unfortunately, the way life is, you have to fuck around and find out for yourself. And that's pretty much, I believe I said it in my other story. Spirituality is legit just fucking around and finding out yourself, doing research for yourself and all that other yak, good stuff, right? And so that's what I've been doing. And so right now, as the start, the woman that I follow, Miss Magical Lady Duchess, I've been following her for over 6, 7, 8 years, like almost 10 years, I think. And there was something that she said, and she was like, it can be a lot to take in when you want to come into your spiritual practice, and it can be a lot, of stuff when you start reading, and it's like crystals, herbs, the elements, gods and deities, the, logic behind alchemy, and the Goetia. Like, there's so much stuff, like studies of fucking different types of witchcraft, and different types of just spiritual beliefs themselves, and then the practice of shamanism. Like, I was one of those people that was like really getting overwhelmed with wanting to learn everything in like 3 months, wanting to just suck everything in. But because the way my brain works, I get overstimulated very easily, and then I crash and burn, and then I don't do anything for like a month, and then I hate myself for it. And so before the new year came, for those of you that follow me on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, I've already spoken about that. I think I uploaded here. I don't remember. I think I did. Anyway, I started taking my thing seriously and wanting to read. She said, find one thing that you really, really like, no matter what it is, whether it's crystals, whether it's herbs, whether it's the elements, whether it's a type of magic. Just pick one thing, learn about that, and then slowly it will kind of build up on its own. It will start taking certain things. And so what I want to do, I came across this other podcast. I forgot the fucking name of it. This person I started following because she approaches the craft in an academic way. And I've never seen it that way. It's like very realistic Hogwarts type shit. Like, she approaches it with the history and the knowledge that has been written down, and how people believe and why people believe, and how they practice. And I'm like, that right there, that is what I want, because it feels very real. Because even though, like, I love carving the candles, I love rubbing the oils and putting the herbs on, and I love going out hiking and touching the sand and touching the trees, that's all like very personal stuff. Talking about it sometimes still feel very hippy dippy nonsense, right? That woo shit. Especially if I talk to someone who doesn't like really know anything about it, the fact that she approaches it in a more scholar kind of way brings it more into the realm of reality. It like solidifies it. It brings depth to it, and it makes it feel more believable for me anyway. Because I feel like even if the people around you respect your decision and they're okay with you practicing, it still feels like they're judging you ever so slightly. Like, yeah, she's into that hippy dippy shit. And it's like, like, I don't know, maybe it's just I'm still learning how to take myself seriously because I'm trying to really dedicate myself into reading. I'm sorry, it is cold. Into reading and learning. So, going back to what Lady Duchess said, the one thing that I really want to learn is the different kinds of practice. And what better way to start than with my own race, right? Spanish. Hence why, this is why I started with this. And boy, is this an eye opener. Wow! It's great. I have so many ideas, so many thoughts. But anyway, and then right after that, I have a book. I'm reading whatever is access to me. Like, unfortunately, I don't have the means to like go in and find a mentor in each practice. Like if I knew someone who practiced brujeria, have them be my mentor for me to really get an in-depth understanding of that. And then go to, because the next book I have, it's a bigger book. It's on hoodoo. Like I'm only reading what's, just for me to get somewhat of an understanding of certain things and certain practices. And then if I could have someone, who did practice, if I had the means to have them be a mentor, I would. And then of course there's, Wicca, which I don't really want to get, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really want to get into Wicca. That was the first thing that I got into when I started back when I was like 16, and I'm over it. I'm not, forgive me. I understand it is like the root of a lot of the things that we understand, and that's why I kind of don't want to get back into that. But there is some like brushing up on certain things, like certain basics that need to be kind of just back to the basics type of thing. And what fascinates me is the different, like there are things, like I can't speak on that book just yet because it's not a book review. This video is not about that. But the things that I learned from like all the so-called basic witchcraft basics are from like European backgrounds, right? And reading that book, they say certain things that I'm like, interesting, even though I don't agree with that, but I understand why it's built that way and why they believe it in that way. And a lot of like correspondences are also different. And I find that very fascinating because I'm pretty sure it's because of like the region of planet Earth of where they came from. So it's like certain herbs you use as correspondence in Wicca, they use something different in like brujeria. And I'm pretty sure hoodoo is going to have a different correspondence as well. And so I love knowing the different, like if I can find a book on like Asian witchcraft or like Indian witchcraft, like that's my goal. Like that's my goal for this first year of like reading and learning. I want to know academically the different types of ways that people practice. And hopefully that'll help me into my own. And I'm I'm very excited. I am so excited. Now I did I got a chance to take some classes, which is, to me, it's a new way of practicing because, it's starting to gain popularity. And I know some of the older practitioners don't really fuck with it because it feels like there's no, I can understand there's no discipline or structure, even though you need to be very disciplined in that form of magic to be able to practice that. And it's chaos magic. And for some reason, I'm drawn to that because I I I'm forcing myself to read in a certain way because I lack discipline, because my mind is very all over the place, very chaotic, and all this other stuff, right? And when I came across the people that practice like chaos, magic, I'm like, that kind of makes sense to me because, like, I feel like nature itself is constructed chaos, if that makes sense, right? If that makes sense. Right, so that's where I want to take it. So the classes that I've am taking is like a 10-week course. Every week it's a different lesson, and that's something that I can keep up with, which I'm very, very excited. However, I'm 3 weeks behind because I had gotten sick one week and it fucking dropped me on my ass. And then it took the week after that to kind of get everything back into motion. So literally sick for 2 weeks. And then the week after that, I got my period. So that also knocked me on my ass a little bit. But within those 2 weeks, the lesson that I'm currently on right now, it's the Order of Chaos Dark Arts classes. And I love that, like, even though it's every week, you can still take it at your own pace. And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying not to beat myself up too much by not being so extremely constructive that, like, it makes me, like, depressed when I feel like I'm not doing anything, and then I don't do anything. I give up. So I'm not beating myself up about it. Taking the classes, one of the courses that I'm at now, you have to work with the runes, which I know it said to take one thing at a time, but I'm kind of taking two things. So learning about, like, the academic scholar way of, like, practicing the craft, right? Learning about the different types of practices and different types of beliefs. I also am very, very sigil heavy. Symbols, I can't get enough of. There's something about a good symbol and a good sigil that just looking at it, I foam out the mouth. Excuse me. So while I'm, like, learning, I have been doing a lot of, like, sigil work for myself. It may seem a little kiddish, I guess, but it helps keep my creativity very high. Like, what I've been doing, so let's say the people who can't, like, afford candles, the color candles or whatever, they say go cheap, you could do Dollar Tree or whatever, right? But let's say if you're, like, really tight on money and you want to really bring in, like, a specific color, and you want something that helps represent that color. I made a sigil. I sat down every day. I skipped some days naturally, but I would take a few hours, and I would sit down with the color. I'd write the color, the name of the color, and I'd fiddle around and figure out my own symbol for that color. And so I was doing that a lot I have a book specifically just for like symbols and sigils, because it's one of my favorite things. It keeps my creative brain open, and it's a simple practice. It's a simple magic. Um, I've created a symbol, a sigil for protection. I have it on my phone because I have my phone with me all the time. So anywhere I go, I have it. It's in a piece of paper. It's on my phone. Um, you can design a sigil for anything, and it can't just be like that's the thing. You can't like half-ass it either. You have to really put some thought into it. Understand like why you're using these symbols. Like the why is very important. So really sitting down with these, the name or the sentence or whatever, sitting down and kind of creating it for yourself. Um, it's very tantalizing to me. Like it is one of my favorite things, and I love when I get to carve it into a candle. There's something about carving candles and then dressing it in oil and then burning it. Sorry. Lost train of thought. Anyway, so with this specific constantly going, no, it's all relative. It all bleeds back into each other. My conversations are constantly bleeding back.